In the last 9 months, we have watched Wall Street batter old line industries. And those old line industries, their stocks are getting pummeled.
It's taken a long time, I think, not for the technology to get to that point, but for companies that are suffering from this technical sprawl, this spider's web of different things that they've bought to solve individual problems. It's taken a while for them, I think, to realize that this is not a technology problem, this is a human problem. And we're not trying to automate something, we're trying to change the way that work is done.
Welcome to the EIQ Waves Podcast, where we explore what it truly takes to scale automation across the enterprise, responsibly and intelligently. In each episode, we go beyond the buzzwords to bring you grounded insights from the leaders who are actively building, governing, and shaping the future of AI and automation in the real world. On this episode, we have Jerry Wallis, Director of Solution Consulting for the UK and Europe, and Gary Smith, Sales Director at EvoluteIQ. They'll unpack what it really takes to turn AI ambition into enterprise-wide execution.
So Jerry, we've been working together now for many years. We started before in Blue Prism, which was an early RPA automation player, and now we find ourselves really again at the nexus, I think, of an organization that's really taking things to a level that maybe we thought in all of our discussions that you and I have had over the past few years, we thought it was supposed to come here, right? And I almost look at this that it's like Kurzweil's Singularity for work. And what I mean by that is work's become fragmented across systems and teams and data stores, and all of the systems that we've built, really going back since the mainframe, right? We went from the mainframe to the mini, to the computer server era, to SaaS, and now we're arriving in a new era completely that I think has changed everything, as Steve Jobs might have said. And I'm curious about your thoughts because we have had this discussion in the past, but we haven't updated it. And I think the disintegration we're seeing across work has come actually as a result of the architectures and the way that we've put in point solution tools. It's literally disintegrated the work fabric between humans and systems and data.
I agree with you, Gary, on so much of what you said. I think work and the way work is done and the impact that technology has had on work has evolved steadily over decades. IT systems and different technologies have evolved steadily. And as you said, they may have fixed some problems. They may have made work more efficient in some ways, but they have also introduced a whole series of new, maybe unexpected problems. I think it is human nature to try and solve the problem that's in front of you in any particular time. Systems have become fragmented naturally, and either individuals or companies have looked at ways of solving parts of that problem. They may have been successful at doing that. You know, as you said, we were both at Blue Prism, an RPA company, for a long time, and RPA has addressed some of those issues of people being involved in low value work, being the human API, if you like, automating tasks. And OCR and intelligent document processing has come along and maybe automated some aspects of reading structured and unstructured documents. And artificial intelligence, in its first guise of machine learning and predictive analysis, has addressed some aspects of how do you use the data that exists within a company to help drive that company forward. But they're all solutions to individual problems. They're all point solutions, as we have seen, and I'm sure many people listening to this will recognize that solving individual problems creates its own set of issues with, okay, we need a COE for the RPA technology. As you said a few minutes ago, we're starting to arrive at this place where the only way to fix some of this stuff is to take a step back and look at the way work is done holistically and try and find a way of solving for that, solving for the way that work is done in an organization rather than solving point technology solutions. I'm also, you know me well, quite a cynical person and maybe quite an impatient person, and it's taken a long time, I think, not for the technology to get to that point, but for companies that are suffering from this technical sprawl, this spider's web of different things that they've bought to solve individual problems. It's taken a while for them, I think, to realize that this is not a technology problem. This is a human problem. And we're not trying to automate something. We're trying to change the way that work is done.
The work itself has not evolved with the technologies that came in to hit those point elements. And like you say, to solve one thing at a time typically results in a downstream negative effect. And, if I look at the whole reason for being of EvoluteIQ, when you speak to any of our founders, right, they all say the same thing. The end-to-end processes have become disintermediated in the whole process. And you start to look at this and say to yourself, maybe it's not the workflow design that it needs to be, right? And is the workflow actually an inherent part of the old people process technology framework that now needs to be rediscovered in a context that incorporates AI? I think that the AI component has actually completed the breaking of that end-to-end disintegration. We've been speaking with major global 100 organizations that are saying, how do we deploy at scale and across the enterprise in an integrated, responsible, and safe manner AI, right? Whether it's agentic, whatever the use case is, how do we do that? Well, you really need to rethink the work around it. And that incorporates the workflow, the event flow, all of the data stores. I mean, how many organizations do you and I speak to on a daily basis where they can't even get to the data they have? Well, if AI is predicated on data and data is truly the new oil, that's a real problem.
I think there is a danger that, the advent of agents, the advent of generative AI, risks being another point solution to things, and I think not that I'm happy that people have any fear of the future of their jobs, but I think the noise that it has created in the industry has caused the leaders of organizations to maybe stop and think about, well, what does the organization of the future need to look like, number one. But also, I think where they have started to investigate agentic automation and what agents can do, they have, as you said, realized that you can't just build agents to do everything. There needs to be good, clean data supporting the business. There needs to be deterministic frameworks to wrap around that to give those agents and those people that are working there the ability to perform work in a very well defined, constrained way without hallucinating. They need to understand context more than anything. So from EvoluteIQ's perspective, I think this is a really interesting phase for us to be in, because we have a platform that has been built to do all of those things, to do the governance, to do the management, to do the orchestration, to do the connection to data, to provide that deterministic framework for automated work to be done in. So I think we have a solution to the problem of, how do you bring back, how do you row back from all of this fragmentation of technology and what have you. But I still come back to the point that it is not really a technology problem, it is a human problem. And it's a human problem either in the sense of how do you use this technology to create meaningful work for people, i.e. work that makes use of what the human brain is good at, innovation, creativity, problem solving, troubleshooting, all of those things, create meaningful work for people, at the same time as leading that organization through a change, through a creation of a new business operating model that introduces that agentic technology to allow people to do those very human kinds of work without breaking the business. We are really talking about helping organizations create a new operating model to rethink the way that work is done within the business, and that's a big thing, But right back to your first point about lots of different bits of technology in the business. You've got to look at the problem from a holistic perspective. You've got to look at how do you want work to be done in this organization in the coming years, and then how do you build a plan to get there. We're both working at EvoluteIQ because we believe the technology gives you the foundation to do that, but that change is a very human thing, and it requires vision and strength of leadership to implement those things. We can make our technology do what it needs to do, but I think it's down to the leadership of organizations to have a vision for a more holistic vision for the future of work, rather than how do we get agents into the business.
I've heard criticism that it's a failure of imagination of the C-suite, and when I think about it, I don't think that's correct. I think they're reacting to things in a way that we've done it in the past, right? We've always put point solutions at things. Once we got past the mainframe and the mini, everything kind of fragmented. It went from one ox pulling a cart to hundreds and hundreds of chickens pulling a cart. And then it moved from chickens to cats pulling the cart. And that's like, the old saying of herding cats. You're going to get exactly what you expect. And I think it's the best evidence for this, Jerry, has been the fact that we have now had 2 college graduating class that have come into a market with absolutely minimal, if any, entry-level positions. And that is a result, I think, of the villain you're describing, which is the villain of a technological architecture and an operationalization of work that no longer applies. And that's an enormous thing that you're unpacking it really as you were leading up to this. And I couldn't agree more, or you and I wouldn't be here together continuing our journey and our mission. And to your point, I see exactly what you see, especially in the daily conversations that we're having with, some of the largest organizations in the world, many, if not most, with our trusted partners. And everybody's struggling, but the capability that we've put together is such that I think it was done in a way that 7 years ago when this place started was absolutely prescient in its determination. And it blows my mind because we have over 3,000 connectors that go to just about every system you can imagine that's ever been made, right? So don't throw away what you've built. It's valid. Just harmonize all of it with human labor, right? And then, as you're saying, tease apart those elements that the humans do very, very well. That in fact, no compute right now can even begin to touch, right? And that's things like original thought, creativity, working extremely well with other humans, problem solving at a scale and a speed and a relevance that doesn't hallucinate, that doesn't do things that maybe its compute counterpart or human counterparts can't do yet. I think you're saying the exact right thing, and that would be my advice to anybody looking to truly deploy a strategic AI based capability within the organization. That's really the way they should come at it. And what I'd love to get your thoughts on is the why of it. Because at this point now, consensus is it's really stipulated, right? It's not if, you have to do this. And how do we know it? In the last 9 months, we have watched Wall Street batter old line industries. And those old line industries, their stocks are getting pummeled. They love the NVIDIAs, they love the OpenAIs, and they love the Anthropics, and they love the Microsofts and the Googles. It's all evolved. So how do we do that then in the old line, the old line industries that have been a cornerstone of the fabric of corporations everywhere around the globe?
One of the ways of looking at EvoluteIQ is as an abstraction layer that sits on top of a customer's existing legacy infrastructure. We don't change anything, we don't break anything. We're completely non-invasive in that respect. As you said, Gary, we have got hundreds, thousands of connectors to legacy systems of record. We don't require a customer to throw out anything that they've spent time and money building. We will integrate that, we will connect to that, we will automate that, along with all of the agents and workflows and everything else that we build. So in terms of beginning to build a new operating model, we're a very gentle, non-intrusive way of beginning to do that. Over time, customers can migrate off of those things that are now sat beneath that abstraction layer onto other modern new technology. But we represent a very low risk way of achieving dramatic change in the organization. The scale of change is really limited by the vision and imagination of the leadership of the organization. I think we're very lucky to work for an organization where whatever a customer asks us, we can pretty much always say yes. The only thing we need to decide is what kind of yes we're saying, i.e., what way are we going to help that customer transform. But back to a point that I was making a few minutes ago about graduate level jobs disappearing. I think there will be many existing jobs that either will disappear or will transform significantly. But one of the ways we're helping that, I think, is we have a very powerful platform with a very sophisticated, comprehensive set of technology. And again, if you go back 5 to 10 years, you would have needed to have taken a lot of training. You would have needed to be very technically capable to wield that toolkit in order to achieve anything. Today, somebody can build an agentic application in EvoluteIQ just by chatting to it. So to this point about jobs changing, I think the skill that is going to be most in demand in most organizations in the future is not the ability to do a particular job. It is the ability to describe that job, to explain what the work needs to be, because the great explainers are the people who will be able to train those agentic platforms to do the work for them. So you can imagine, you can imagine EvoluteIQ sat there, as a willing workforce of untrained agents, just waiting for someone to explain to them the work that they have to do. And it is a radical change from people being trained to do work. It is a radical change from IT people being trained on technology, but to me that's a really exciting thing.
If you enjoyed this episode of the EIQ Waves podcast, don't forget to share, subscribe, and leave a comment, and stay tuned for brand new episodes that shaped the future of enterprise automation.